The second annual Global Assessment Trends Report summarizes insights shared by HR leaders from over 230 global companies. Highlights of the report include key HR trends related to candidate assessment, an overview of talent measurement practices around the world, and how priorities have changed in just 1 year. In a recent HCI Webcast sponsored by Previsor, Sarah Falla, Product Research Manager at Previsor, presented the survey's findings.
So if you're not familiar with our Global Assessment Trend Study, this is the second formal year for this study, but it really is a focus on talent measurement, so how companies around the world measure their talent, and it looks for trends in assessment that impact talent management initiatives. My colleague Andy Solomonson and I have been studying these trends since 2003, primarily in response to clients who desired but couldn't find benchmarking data on how companies measure their talent. And this, again, we're focusing here on talent measurement, and it's really in contrast to what we traditionally think of as talent management, which are all of the programs and processes that are involved in managing your workforce. Talent measurement really provides the data that drives successful talent management programs and helps companies make informed decisions about their employees. So our study was completed in November of last year and included 234 companies from around the world. And we provide a link to the report at the end of at the webcast. And in it, you'll see a wide range of industries represented as well as company sizes. Most participants were leaders within their organizations, either in HR or in other corporate leadership roles. So, given the context we just discussed, the economic conditions and so forth, demonstrating return on investment is increasingly important for companies around the world. And based on our results, 70% are feeling pressure to show results or return on investment for the assessment tools that they're using. Despite the reported pressure, 56% of all companies are actually collecting metrics to examine the value of their HR investments. Of those who are using pre-hire assessments, which was 86% of companies in our particular study, 57% were actually collecting metrics to examine the value of tests, while fewer than that, only 44% were collecting metrics to examine the value of their interview processes. So the takeaway is that 50 plus or minus % are examining the value of pre-hire assessments, and what are they really trying to impact? So let's talk about that for just a minute. Again, only 57% of companies are using pre-hire assessments or actually tracking their metrics. But when we focus on what they're actually trying to impact, the top business outcome was quality of hire. That's followed by some other maybe more objective type measures such as retention. Likewise, 47% said they were focusing on productivity. And one of the interesting findings that we found was that only 16% reported trying to impact financial metrics such as sales revenue. So let's talk about some of the interesting findings related to leading-edge hiring tools. So first we'll get into kind of the typical hiring process, and based on our research, we see some familiar faces here. So certainly application forms continue to be used, likewise skills and ability tests, background checks, phone screens, and the like. We found that in 2009 there was a little more enthusiasm for trying new tools, while our report for 2010 shows that companies were a little more hesitant to try new things. Despite that, we did have a few top plan-to-use hiring tools in 2010, and those are listed at the bottom of the slide, including social media, informal searches, and I'll distinguish that from formal searches in just a second. Situational judgment tests tied with social media formal searches, and then job-specific solutions or batteries of assessments that are designed specifically for one particular job.
Sarah, this is Amy. We actually had a question come in from the audience. If you can explain, and I'm curious too because I haven't heard this term before, if you can explain what a situational judgment test is, please.
Yep, absolutely. So a situational judgment test provides almost a hypothetical situation for a candidate to to determine how he or she may react. So an example might be a candidate might see a question that says something like, pretend you are the manager of a team that's transitioning from, in a matrix organization to one that's more hierarchical. What's the best way to handle that particular situation? And then there would be a series of responses that the candidate would actually have to choose the best response. So a test could be filled with those types of questions depending on what the job is, and really ask the candidate to determine what the best response is. These are used and created a lot of times for specific jobs, so for things like a bank teller that might have to deal with a certain situation. And those were, again, that particular type of test was one of the top planned to use tools in the future. It kind of combines that problem solving with real job relevant context for the candidate. And if you think about the talent within your organization, we like to think about it as a landscape. So talent measurement helps bring your talent landscape into focus. So you're making decisions every day about your talent, and that's what you do, that's your role, but the decisions can be made easier by understanding this particular landscape. So with the appropriate data, you can answer these questions, the ones that are all around the picture here, and bring your talent landscape into focus. So again, if the concern is retention, then we really feel like organizations that consider their talent landscape and then structure their talent management programs accordingly using talent measurement where it makes sense can really provide them with an overall strategic advantage. So I think some of the great trends that we're seeing in 2010 are focus on internal talent and ensuring retention during recovery. And I think, again, structuring some of those what might be right now informal programs like career development or promotion will help ensure that employees understand there is a path for them within your company. I think using social media technology for recruitment has a lot of promise, certainly ensuring that your recruiters are kind of engaging or actively promoting your organization with fans or friends, given whatever technology we're discussing is certainly something that companies are using to their advantage. I think it's great that companies are focusing on quality of hire and that we're seeing some increase in actually collecting metrics related to quality of hire. And certainly caring about candidates is something that is getting played in the press, in the popular press, and it's certainly something that we've seen can impact how candidates feel about your organization, whether or not they recommend you, and that kind of thing to other folks. Some of the trends that we would like to see maybe go away, or maybe that you shouldn't consider, is just using these unstructured processes for career development and promotion. Again, even unstructured interviews. When you don't have a structure, when there isn't an objective kind of piece of information that comes out of your process, it's very difficult to link it to a business outcome. It's difficult to show support for it to others within your organization. Again, we really just cannot recommend social media data as a source for employment decisions, whether that be, at least at this time, formal or informal. It's very tough. This has been a hot topic, if you will, among folks that are really interested in recruitment, selection, and social media as to whether or not you can actually formalize that particular process. Right now, it just can't be recommended. There isn't enough information about whether or not those decisions are actually related to business outcomes, the legality of it. It hasn't been challenged yet, but to my knowledge, but certainly your organization probably doesn't want to be the guinea pig for that. And then not linking assessments to financial metrics. Like we talked about, quality of hire is a great grading concept, but it must be linked to something that, again, can show the value of that particular program to your organization.